For a long time, humanity used resources to benefit their quality of life. Resources, however, are not always there when you need it. In some countries, there are lots of resources, while in others, there are little to none. As time passed, often these countries fought over resources to benefit themselves only, which was called a resource war. But then, there was also a much more peaceful way to earn resources, and that is through cooperation. My name is Si Wu, and in this video, we're going to look at different ways that conflict and cooperation can occur through resources. Let's start with conflicts. One of the most well-known types of resource-led conflicts are resource wars. Resource wars are disputes between nations over a resource or more. I have chosen two examples of resource wars to show you how resource wars can lead to conflict. One is a water war between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan over the Nile River. Another one is an oil war between Iraq and Kuwait over Kuwait's oil. Let's begin with water wars. Water is the key to life, but it can also be the key to death. Water is too important, and that can cause violent conflicts called water wars. This is about Africa's water war, a fight between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. Not South Sudan. Egypt was very concerned of what might happen to the Nile River, and made sure that no building projects, such as dams, were built, and also made sure that the Nile was not disturbed by any changes done by another country that would negatively affect Egypt. Then, in 2011, Egypt's revolution gave Ethiopia a chance to begin their Grand Renaissance Dam project. This dam was going to be the turning point of Ethiopia's electricity problems. Egyptians who used the Nile River for agriculture saw the dam as a big threat. The Grand Renaissance Dam was the main source of this water war, and every second the dam stood, the tension only grew. But I think that Egyptians and Ethiopians could have cooperated with each other instead of building this conflict by discussing possible ways to solve this out as a team, rather than arguing who is right and who is wrong. Now, let's talk about oil wars. Oil was very valuable, and countries were very eager to trade with countries that had lots of oil. It happens to be that it can also make countries very eager to attack. During the Iran-Iraq War, Kuwait supported Iraq financially so that Iraq could have a chance at winning the war. However, by the end of the war, Iraq was not able to repay the $14 billion they have received from Kuwait. Iraq apologized, but Kuwait did not accept Iraq's apologies. One day, Iraq had trouble with their oil prices, and when they asked Kuwait for help, Kuwait did the exact opposite. They raised their trade price for oil up. Iraq, driven by how much the Kuwait offended them and their desperate situation, invaded Kuwait on August 2nd, 1990. This became a big issue, and Iraqi forces were physically driven out of Kuwait. It is said that Iraq's invasion's purpose was to control the impressive oil reserves in Kuwait, which, when in Iraq's position, would not only fix Iraq's oil price problems, but also make Iraq the second richest country in the world in oil, right next to Saudi Arabia. But I think it was foolish for Iraq to ask Kuwait for help for the second time, after not being able to repay the incredible amount of money Kuwait used to support Iraq during the war. The least they could do was wait until their relationship recovered, and in the meantime, trade with other nations. We have covered How resources can lead to conflict. Now, let's talk about how resources lead to cooperation. There are many reasons why countries cooperate with each other. In terms of resources, the most likely reason why countries will cooperate is because they have a common interest and they can achieve something very easily if they cooperate together. Thinking of this, I brought two examples of international cooperation, one being an organization and another one being common interest and a good team. Our first example is OPEC. In the 1960s, oil production was managed in the United States by 7 different oil companies, often nicknamed the Seven Sisters. These companies were Anglo-Persian, Gulf Oil, Royal Dutch Shell, SoCal, Esso, Saucony, and Texaco. This made the U.S. very powerful, since many countries depended on the United States for oil production. To reduce the power the United States had on oil, another group was made in Baghdad, Iraq, by Iran, Iraq, Venezuela, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. OPEC. Every 2 years, government members from these countries come to the headquarters of OPEC in Vienna, Austria. What OPEC does is they set production quotas, which determine the limit of how high or low the oil price can get for each country. OPEC's efforts have recently been wavering, and so have its influence over oil production. Two days ago, OPEC attempted to steady the oil prices from effects of the coronavirus on the market, but accidentally sent them plummeting in 14 different countries. I think it was very important that OPEC was made, because if all of the oil production relied on the Seven Sisters, the United States will be unstoppable. Also, the Seven Sisters will be setting production quotas for too many countries, and eventually they will make a mistake, just like how OPEC accidentally sent the oil prices plummeting. Our second example is the cooperation of the two Koreas. Yes, I'm a Korean, and this was kind of a big deal to me, thank you very much. North Korea turns out to have tons of minerals hidden inside it that could cost approximately $10 trillion or more. North Korea, which has been affected by its closed-door policy, is very undeveloped in terms of technology. They, therefore, can't get those riches out. This is the complete opposite case for South Korea, which is a country that excels in technology, but is a barren wasteland for resources. South and North Korea had multiple problems in the past, and even had a war on one occasion, the Korean War. Recently, North Korea, under Kim Jong-un's rule, started cooperating more often with South Korea. And this time, North Korea's abundant minerals and South Korea's technology might be the key to a bigger relationship between the two Koreas than friends for talk. North Korea is requesting help from South Korea in extracting the minerals out of North Korea. This might lead to bad outcomes. Relationship is very tricky, since if the two Koreas attempt closer relationships, there might be another conflict based on economic systems. Instead of riches, there might be war. But I think this cooperation is crucial for the survival of the two Koreas, because if these kinds of cooperation did not exist between the two Koreas, North and South Korea will constantly prepare for war against each other. The Korean War is only postponed, and we will never know where and when it might start again. So, in conclusion, resources can lead to conflict in forms of resource wars, and resources can lead to cooperation in forms of organizations/groups and agreements. Resources are very important for the survival. And that's why cooperation is so important. Without good cooperation, nations enter a state of conflict against each other in order to get more resources. We do, after all, want cooperation rather than conflict, right? This is it for my video. Thank you for watching, and make sure to choose cooperation rather than conflict wherever you go.